Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Ben Henschel, Darion Williams, Hoops Moves, Gainesville, Lubbock, Lawrence.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started and bet with FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again. And on today's episode, we're going to get into some things of the round ball variety, hoops moves being made, draft processes being sorted out for some. We'll talk about some of those things near and far that obviously are impacting Texas Tech interest. I also want to talk about how some of those moves and decisions being made has been impacted so far by things continuing to play out in a courtroom when it comes to this impending, we think, House settlement resolution. And also what has also been tied into this and the future of college sports when it comes to some of the things that are going to attempt to be enforced, contracts, agreements, fair play or pay. Did I say pay or play? One of the two or maybe both. We'll get to that in just a moment, which will involve sort of a new idea and something that could be fun to consider. Conference eviction. The rent's late. You're out. Could it be? We'll explore in just a moment. But first, I want to get to some of these hoops moves happening. I'll get to what has been happening really outside of the great state and away from Lubbock, but with a primary suitor for a target Tech has been pursuing, that being Ben Henschel. So Gator moves, probably worth discussing as we catch up on some of that here in just a second. But we've also seen a move from obviously a popular subject of conversation for Red Raider fans, that being Darion Williams, who has made a decision to turn away from draft prospects and back to college prospects. And Chris, I feel like you've been pretty consistent for a while now on sort of Texas Tech's involvement in this and or non-involvement. You never want to say never for anything, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think at last report when we discussed it on this show, it really seemed like as far as finalists or a final list of options, Texas Tech was not going to be really showing up on that list. So I've been buckling up for a while that if we were to see him in a college jersey, it was not going to be a Red Raider one.
And I'm going to ask you this question: what is your read on kind of the fan base here? What have you felt? What have you seen as it relates to Darion Williams now that he's not in the draft? Hey man, we got to figure this out. Got to get him back, or is it, man? You know, we've already moved on. I mean, what are you seeing and feeling out there with?
To me, it seems like the vibe is most would sort of fall over themselves to have him back on the roster. I think there's also a subsection, though, that are really dialed in, you know, the sickest of the sick that have been following this thing in painstaking detail for a while, that probably understand why that's not likely to be the case. And if you're weighing all those things, I think you probably do get why it might not be the case. But the general, just surface level kind of gung-ho Red Raider, and I absolutely get it. First team all-conference guy. I think they'd crawl all over to have him back on the roster.
And here's some of the questions you have to ask yourself. Because I think if say you have missed a lot of what we have said, or you haven't paid attention to his situation or the timing of his situation, it face value, it's confusing. It's like, wait a second, why is this the way it is right here and now, and how did we get here? I don't think that Texas Tech never not wanted Darion Williams to be here. Okay, so I want to make that clear. I think they think he's a really good player. I felt all along as the season was winding down, I personally just felt like he was just kind of done with this phase of his life. Not the Texas Tech phase, just the college phase. Okay, so he pursues the draft, and now he's out and going to come back to college. I think that things change. He obviously had an interest and a very good reason on his standpoint to enter the portal, okay, at the time that he did it. That is important to note here. You're not obligated to have to take him back, or what are you doing? You're not going to drop everything you're doing to squeeze him back into this deal. Money's been spent. People have been recruited. They're not necessarily locked in. I think it's tricky because I think you could create a logjam if you figured out a way. But I think that they are, with what they feel like they need left, maybe they're choosing to spend that money elsewhere or at a different position. But it is. I've heard various conversations like, why is he not going back to Tech? Does he not want to go back there? Do they not want him back? Sure. I think those are all very valid questions. And it's not about want. It was about business, and it was about the timing of things.
Yeah, timeliness. I was going to add for sure.
It's just the way it goes, man.
Yeah.
And I think you were trying to explain the timing. We certainly understand your situation. Want to go to the draft? Want to get in the portal? Good on you. Can we discuss? And then once you do these things, it's like, okay, we are now going to conduct business differently and all those things. And so it's very interesting. It's very tricky. He could, in fact, be on your schedule next year, depending on when you consume this show, whether watch us or listen. Right now, it seems to be. I've been contacted by a variety of different Kansas, media folks, asking me questions about him. Like, what kind of player is he? Blah blah blah. I have said nothing but really good player. And I haven't. Nobody's asked me like, why is he not coming back? I just haven't got. We're not doing any of that. But I think NC State heavily in play, and then I wouldn't rule out Ohio State either. But I think that I just don't, and I'm not going to ever say there's no chance he's back here, because I just think there's too many tweaks and things that could happen and dynamics at play for anybody to ever say, it's just, never. Sure. I don't buy that. But
if he can change and I can change, everybody. Yeah, you get the idea.
Rocky IV.
It does seem like
that was Christmas night, man. in Moscow.
Like we're maintaining the thought that whatever the selection is, Texas Tech is not going to be among this final grouping or final 2 or 3.
And I just don't think they have been. They really haven't been. Yeah, I just think that ship. It's got some wind behind it. It's sailing elsewhere. Yeah.
I think we've used that on a few previous episodes. Are we sailing yet? A couple of times you're like, okay, no, we're still in the harbor, but yeah, it's either at sea on a course or it's just adrift. I have no idea. Look, college or more college basketball, I should say, always seemed like the thing that made by far the most sense, would be the most lucrative thing for him. I would think just quality of basketball life, probably still the most engaging, entertaining, electric, fulfilling, whatever way you want to describe it, as well as compared to maybe the path he'd be taking trying to break into the league, if that's even possible. So from the very beginning, it always made sense he would continue to have a future in college. But I get why there might be some frustration if it's not going to work out here in Lubbock. But if you're a Locked On Texas Tech subscriber, viewer, listener, you should have been prepared for this a long time ago by now. So that's kind of the way I've been, sort of just kind of off the radar. As I've said on previous episodes, I'm just buckling up for the horror of him being on a conference schedule, which I hate the thought of. I wish he'd get out of the conference at least, do us a solid, but he hadn't called yet to ask me for my opinion, so I'm not quite sure when I can get him that thought. Okay, aside from D5, let's get to some moves that made elsewhere and how they're impacting Texas Tech, or if they are. I'm wondering why I'm getting text from Matador Mobsters mentioning the name Boogie to me. Not that that's not exciting, not interesting, thought-provoking, but they're talking about, I think, Gator moves being made essentially, and I'm just wondering if maybe you can fill in some blanks here, Chris, and or how this impacts Tech or a Ben Henschel, because that was the other primary suitor for Henschel that we were considering, aside from pro opportunity, was the Florida Gators. So can you sort of wrap this up for us as far as maybe just catching up on the last few days or week and a half or so?
Yeah, worth filing away.
First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on all the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet hits. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to really win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Yeah, worth filing away. That it seems to be there's a few things that have happened or haven't happened that would seemingly help Texas Tech's situation out as it relates to Ben Hanchel. And I think that Boogie Fland, former Arkansas Razorback, who you saw in the NCAA tournament, albeit briefly, he has inked a $2 million deal that's reported to play for Todd Golden and the defending national champion Florida Gators. Now, would they like to add another young guard, or are they now full? How much money did they have to spend? There's a few dynamics. At face value, though, it would seem to me that this was a positive for Texas Tech in the Ben Hanchel conversation. Just because I still think you have a need for a guard. I can't say that Florida necessarily does, but maybe they do. And maybe they've got, the money tree out back, and they're like, it doesn't matter how much that they just spent. Maybe they're willing to spend more. I would say
it may not be so much a need anymore. Maybe it's just a want, which there's some of that also.
Yes. Because I think you have both. You have a need and a want. And if it's not Ben Hanchel, it'll be somebody else, is my opinion. I think there's different price tags on some of these guys. I think that he's been sitting on a substantial offer from Texas Tech, and I think going through the process, the other positive development is that this isn't a knock. This is really hard. We know how good Darion Williams is. He didn't light it up at the combine. I think that this is a different level against different kinds of talents, and they're asking you to do some different things, guard this, play this spot, whatever. It wasn't necessarily clicking. So I think he tries to get out while he's still got some options and some substantial offers out there. And I just wonder if Ben Hanchel is the same, because he has not popped up on a lot of mock drafts. It's not like he's gone through this process and just absolutely lit it up. That doesn't take away at all from his potential and the upside and his skill set and his measurables and all the things. But that may be breaking right for. So yeah, there's some things pointing him to you. It doesn't mean that he's yours. As you mentioned, he could go back to where he was. He can sit it out. I think that's the most unlikely scenario. But I'm just going to sit out and prepare for the draft. You don't get any better doing that. But I mean, and maybe there's another college shooter out there that has been unreported. It's solidly been Florida and Tech from the get-go, but maybe Florida's not on that list anymore. Maybe they've got their guy. So we shall see. I remain unchanged in my thought process that if he joins you, you are now complete. You are now sealed as a top 10, top 5, maybe even program going into next year. And again, I'm betting on Grant McCaslin and the ability to bring it together and all that. Some may disagree with that nationally but you're still top 10 without Ben Hanchel. It would only go up with him. So there you go.
You show me the man that disagrees with that, I'll show you a liar. Name names. Texas Tech obviously betting on Grant McCaslin in a big way, as we discussed some extension news earlier in the week.
Yeah, you know what else, Cowan, too? We didn't talk about this when we were talking about that said extension. It's interesting to note here. You have now. There's a hypothetical that we tossed up before, but now it's fact. You are now. I think you are now. And again, I think I'm right here. I think Houston, Baylor, Kansas, maybe Arizona. You're paying your basketball coach way more than your football. And I say way more because I think right now, I think Grant is set to make $1 million-ish maybe even over $1 million plus more than the football coach here and Joey McGuire. There was a time where I never thought I would, just fundamentally never thought I would see that, but here we are.
Yeah, that time like a few months ago or whatever. Wasn't that long ago where you're thinking, and it's probably a little. I know just in general across college sports landscape, it's crazy to think about that type of dynamic. I think among those you mentioned, though, for Texas Tech, it's probably sort of the wildest to consider, as opposed to talking Kansas football or Houston football or Arizona football. Again, I know what drives the ship. So typically, for an athletics department, that is. So typically, your head football coach is just compensated more due to that, if nothing else. But
that's how good your basketball coach, though, is right now, that you were like, yeah, we're not going to worry about, some sort of like fundamental, like, well, we've always believed this way. No, this guy he deserves it. And there you go. And this may be very short-lived, because if Joey does what many hope, or kind of cracks the code this year and pushes this thing ahead, his deal will get ripped up, and guess what? He will be rewarded handsomely.
That's fine. We welcome them to gather up all the bags they can with each win that they tally up. McCaslin, McGuire, anybody else. It doesn't even have to be a Mac last name. All others welcome to do the same as well. So that could be fun to watch. But yeah, that is a new era, certainly, at least for some of us here locally and on some of those campuses you mentioned there elsewhere within the Big 12. I don't know how many places across a power conference landscape that would be the reality. But maybe it's something that becomes more normal. I don't know. I wonder if eventually you've got more dollars flowing towards something like men's basketball than maybe you considered previously in non-revenue sharing areas. We already had this conversation earlier in the week about what's rowing these boats and how some are going to have to, not some, and no maybe, you're going to have to invest much more heavily than you did previously, as you've got a, $22-ish million bill now as we move forward. Since we're on the subject of this power forward landscape and sort of in contract mode, I was curious if you had seen some of the news this week when it comes to efforts by some power conference leadership, that being the Power Four. And to set this up, this is basically on the heels of pretty badass move in the state of Tennessee. Sort of an outlaw move here. You basically had the Tennessee state government telling the University of Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Memphis, hey, we're cool with you guys just giving the NCAA regulation guidelines the middle finger. Just want to let you know we're down with it. So you're kind of wondering who else might think that's a good idea across the country. And I bet there will be some others. But I guess in a way, there's like now a plan, or at least an effort, some motivation for power conference leadership and execs to combat these kind of things. And Chris, this is kind of wild to consider, but I'll just give you some of the way that this is being reported. Big 10, SEC, Big 12, and ACC officials circulating a draft of a first-of-its-kind document intended to prevent universities from using state laws to violate new enforcement rules, and basically would require schools to waive their right to pursue litigation or legal challenges against whatever college sports police we've got coming up in the future. So this is being passed around and considered, and there's even been a threat of expulsion considered if you're someone that might turn this down. I'm sure that'll go over well, say in Columbus, Ohio, or Ann Arbor, Michigan, and at Fox headquarters. Sorry, Fox, the Wolverines are out this year. They wouldn't sign the agreement. It's like Randall Pink Floyd in The Slip, dazed and confused. Are you going to sign it, Pink? Will you sign it, Pink? There's a lot to process here, but some of the service level stuff I'm really interested in, starting with the state telling its universities, we got you back. Roll how you want to in relation to these things.
And what buried in the lead of this article is that this idea, this concept, was first introduced back in February. I think that the smart people in the room knew, hey man, as soon as this House thing passes, there will be lawyers, and it's just never going to stop. So basically, this is an idea. Does it hold any water? I mean, you're trying to make it such, but you're trying to make it to where, like, please, no more lawyers. Please just stop. Like, or we're never going to get anywhere. And that's, I mean, billable hours, man, it's undefeated. And that's what everybody's just going like King's X, man. Like we're litigating and arguing everything. And like, it's just nonstop. So this is an attempt to try to calm the waters once something is indeed passed. So let's give this thing a chance. I don't know if everybody will agree. I've seen lots of group of five anonymous folks saying this is like they're operating like the mob. They're trying to ramrod this deal in and all that. All of this is a mess, but it's going to be litigated to death. And I think I get where the Power Four and like, Ross Dellinger's reporting from Yahoo Sports. I get where the general premise is we're trying to save us from ourselves. We're trying to just save this deal. We're trying to let this boat float. And right now y'all keep shooting holes in it. And so I don't know. It seems far-fetched that you could just be like, hey, everybody sign this deal or else no more lawsuits. I don't know. But I get the general idea and the premise there on why this is being done, because I just think that upon the House case being settled, which could happen any minute, theoretically, you're just going to be lining up to more and more lawsuits and the stuff that we've talked about. Like, so you're going to tell me what I feel is market value on how I want to pay an NIL deal to an athlete. Like, so you get to tell me what this little committee you've put together gets to tell me what I think that's worth. Your little market value book, like, it's America, man. So yeah, here we are. I just feel like life is a flat circle or a full circle or something, whatever. I don't know what applies there, but yeah.
I kind of feel like they're rolling out one of the wildest ideas first. And I know there've been a whole lot of things brainstormed, but I haven't seen a ton get attention, at least to this extent, when you've got, say, Ross Dellinger reporting on it. But I just can't see this ever being something that would be considered agreeable when you're talking about, hey, if you don't commit, we're not playing you. You're losing conference membership. I
know.
I just can't imagine such a
because
reality.
there's like 28 different state laws, and people are coming up with them as quick as they can to try to protect their constituents and their member institutions and all the like. It's just because you can't have 28 different sets of rules.
Yeah, like now, 14 states permit direct school-to-athlete payments. 9 have laws that prohibit those types of things, and then there's a few left over there saying, I don't know.
And basically, the Tennessee law, in so many terms, is like, yeah, do what you want, pay them whatever you want. We don't care. I mean, like, there's no cap, there's no this or that. So, like, yeah, you don't have to worry about that here. Like, you'll be fine. Like, I mean, so it was very carefully worded, and it was in conjunction with the administration at the University of Tennessee. They were the ones that collaborated. So you're right; they're trying to sink the ship. So I just don't know where we go here, but this is going to continue to be. Everybody's trying to outsmart the other guy. So until you call the dogs off and say, "Man, please no, stop with the ambulance chasing," or stop with the your. Because it's just the lawyers are the ones that are ultimately going to continue to get paid off of this deal, because this should be litigated left and right until, we don't have anything left. I don't know.
Well, sure. And especially if we're getting into the enforcement mode, because you're going to be telling X or X player, I'm sorry, you're not worth this. Actually, this deal is worth this. And this is according to our algorithm. And then it's going to be very easy for them to say, all right, Mr. Attorney, tell them they're full of bull. And
I heard this the other day, which I thought was fascinating, is that what schools wanted to go back the way it was. Now, with the fact that you may have to pay the revenue share. So it's not necessarily the way it was. However, it's not just totally free market in that you can just spend wildly and all the things through a collective and all that. They would like to get it back to the bag of cash gray area environment, because the market value is much lower. You can't hand somebody $1 million in a bag, like in a suitcase. Like that's just not realistic. So they like the way it was done, whether it's underhanded or not. This was on a national podcast.
Yeah.
It's like that's what everybody kind of wants is the way that, hey man, meet me at the McDonald's. Here's your paper sack.
Well, I bet they can't be
enjoy
held
your
up
cheeseburger.
because the student athlete's not going to immediately hold a press conference saying, "Can you believe they only offered me this under the table?"
I know.
It's just,
but it just costs everybody far fewer dollars if it's the way that it was. So it's just crazy. I mean, all this stuff is nuts. So yeah, we've got documents. Please don't sue us. No more. You just sign your right to sue away. Crazy.
You built too many fancy buildings, college sports, and you've made this $1 billion bed for yourself to lie in. And you got some of those participants who are looking at those buildings thinking, I'd like to have a little of that crown molding action. So I don't know where we go, but this is the reality. And as we've talked about before, toothpaste back into the tube, genie's back into bottles. Don't work that way. So we move forward. All right. Something interesting to consider, and probably something that I anticipate will not have legs, at least in the sense of conference membership being lost, but we'll see what else they're going to kick out to us, because I'm sure there are some even wilder ideas that they've been rolling around. And I'm kind of in this instance subscribing to the never say never, don't rule anything out theory, because you're essentially trying to reformat something almost entirely that we are accustomed to for a century plus, but in so many ways is antiquated and outdated and does need reformatting. So I don't know why there would be any idea that's really too wild for considering here or there. We'll see. And I'm sure we'll have some more to consider in the future. Chris, appreciate your time and perspectives as always. Enjoyed it, man. And we'll see you for the next one.
Sounds good. And man, I just feel like we've talked, I've used the term lawyer and litigation and settlement and way too much. It's like, this is when you get to this is what we have right now though. And it's a big deal. I get it, but man, I can't wait for the games to actually start and we can move away from a lot of this silliness, but this is what we're left with right now. But hey man, good luck to D5. Good luck to Ben Hanschel. Devin Cambridge back in the league at UCF. So maybe we'll see him again next year. And
that's right.
Boogie Flan, you're at Florida now, but we ended your career at Arkansas, literally. All right, man. Keep hope alive, everybody. We'll talk to everybody next time.
Appreciate you for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And yeah, if you're an aspiring sports broadcaster, you're going to want to make sure you're up on contract law. We all knew that going into it. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks to the Everydayers for always riding along, and shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time, and as always, we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.